put today to you and your fellow leaders is that it's worth some time to put some thought and to put some really good conversation into what's the quality of the environment and context that you're building as school leaders, because that environment or context is driving or generating behaviour. Now, I use that language quite explicitly, quite deliberately, because what we know about human behaviour from a behavioural science point of view is that the key determinant around what behaviour will be chosen by an individual is the environment or the context or the circumstances within which that individual sits. So it's worth for a while thinking about what kind of environment we're creating. Now, there is a reason that that phenomena of environment generating behaviour is happening, and it's because of affect. Every environment, every context that we walk into triggers within us certain affects, certain feelings that will always drive behavioural choice. So if I think for myself about going back to my family home, the place where I grew up, where my mum and dad raised myself and my three sisters, Mum and Dad are still in that environment, still in that wonderful family home. And every time I walk into it, there are certain feelings, affects that come to me within a couple of steps. I feel warm, I feel safe, I feel connected, and I feel collaborative. And therefore, the behaviours that I choose as I walk into that context are reflective of those feelings. So I feel that I just have to give my mum a hug. I feel that I have to shake my dad's hand because that's what we do and that's what we've done for a really long time. I feel like I then need to find my way into the kitchen and make sure that anybody who needs or wants a coffee gets one. And I also find myself in circumstances that I actually don't find myself often in other places, and that's that I find myself working with my three other sisters as grown adults preparing meals for everybody, because that's what we did. There was a cultural norm in that context around collaboration and working together that none of us have been able to shake. It just comes to us. Now, I want to be really mindful here that not everybody has those feelings and therefore doesn't get those behaviours when they walk into a family home. A family home can sometimes be a place of great sorrow and regret or even shame for people, and therefore the behaviours that we get for people when they get together at family functions such as Christmas can often be a real challenge for people. There can be a bit of conflict rather than collaboration. So what I would like to do in my work is reflect on how I can encourage people as they walk into various contexts within the broader space of the physical confines of my school grounds, is how they could feel like collaborating rather than feeling like stepping into conflict. And I know that this has occurred for me many times as a school leader, as a principal. I know that I would sometimes call students in whose behaviour was becoming of concern to me, or I might be a little worried that they might be stepping towards bullying style behaviours, and I would like to do something about reducing the prevalence of that. So I'd call them in for a chat just to connect. The student had done nothing wrong. Yet when they walked into that environment of the principal's office, their face would become ashen, a few beads of sweat would appear on the forehead, and they would get very defensive in their behaviour. Not because of anything I was saying, not because of the relationship that existed between me and that student, but just because we were in the principal's office. And it feels like a place that they had been in trouble previously. There's only two things for me to do in that circumstance. One is to have the conversation somewhere else. Or secondly, create an overwhelming number of positive interactions in that space, the space of my office, that they would then begin to feel more comfortable there, that I could change the affect or the feelings they had as they stepped into that space so that the conversation would be more productive. Now, as school leaders, I want to put it to you that there are 5 things that you could consider, that you could have a conversation about right now, that could impact the positivity of the environment, context, culture that you're building and leading. And the first one is I want you to think a little bit about the presentability or the welcoming nature of the physical environment that you're creating. I'm going to tell you right now that I will never ever criticise a school leader for choosing to add a lick of paint, to bring in some better playground equipment, and to make their school a place that people want to be. Once you can make your school grounds aspirational for people to be in physically, then you can expect them to start to pick up the cultural and behavioural norms of that physical environment. So it's a hugely important thing to do, such that some of the literature and research that you'll read around reducing bullying in schools will mention in its top 10 strategies the ability to improve the physical environment of the school. The second thing I want you to think about, and this may be where I'm going to give you a provocative moment, is I want you to think about how clean your school grounds are. there's something that's almost undeniable that many behavioural scientists will refer to, and that is that if the environment's messy, the behaviour will be messy. And it's unfortunate that parents will pick up the importance of your environment and make judgments about it through the cleanliness of it. Unfortunately, what we know about even parents on school tours is that when they come into a school and they're thinking about sending their child to that school, they'll look around and the first two things they notice are, number one, how clean or otherwise the environment is, and secondly, they'll look at the quality of the playground equipment. We would love it if they would look first at the quality of the interactions between people and the pedagogy being deployed, but they don't. They notice this other stuff first. And if we can tidy up those key components of what the yard's like, which brings us back to that first point, and secondly, how clean our environment is, we can expect orderly behaviour to come from an orderly environment. The third thing I want you to think about is a couple of F's. I want you to think about, firstly, how fun your environment is, and secondly, how functional it is. From a fun point of view, what I want you to do is to just cast your eye over your yard today, over your playground or the environment that the students congregate in at lunchtime if you happen to be in a secondary environment. And I want you to think about where most of the smiles happen and what are they doing in those spaces, and how is it that we could provide equipment, how is it that we could provide activity and resource such that kids are gravitating towards spaces where they smile rather than places where they frown. Fun environments are great for filling the void of otherwise environments that might be filled with negative or bullying style behaviours. And then we get to functional, which means we're going inside now, we're thinking about the classrooms. And if we're genuine, if we're authentic around cooperative learning being a driver of reducing the prevalence and severity of bullying in your schools, then we need to think about how functional our classrooms are for that purpose. So if we want students to be able to cooperate, to collaborate, and to be able to solve academic problems together so they can transfer that problem-solving skill to the social domain, then we might want to think about whether sitting our students in rows or in individual front-facing desks is going to serve that purpose better or worse than putting them together in pods and giving them activity that encourages that collaborative and cooperative skill. The fourth thing I want you to think about is signposts, and this may be a strange thing, I guess, to think about, but schools where it's really clear that there has been a line drawn between the environment away from the school and within the school have a really successful rate of being able to improve behaviour. Because whatever has been going on for you in the past, you might have had a tough weekend as a student, or even as a parent, you might have had a horrible morning trying to get the kids ready and get them to school. If you can have a marker that says as you walk into our environment, that this is a great place to be. This is a place you belong. This is a place where we love having you. Then you create a great opportunity for people to demonstrate better behaviours. A really clever principal who I knew always made himself that signpost. He stood out the front of the school and put himself on yard duty in the morning in a ridiculously large hat, a sombrero, and every single person he walked past got a friendly welcome to the day. And it was wonderful for just giving people a message that whatever has been going on for you in the context where behaviour hasn't been great and feelings haven't been great, when you walk past me, when you step into our environment, we love having you here, and this is a place where we smile, where we achieve, and where we collaborate in a really effective and meaningful way. And the final thing I want you to think about is what's special about your school. What is the feature of your school that your students would brag about to other students who don't go to your school? So, for instance, a school that I've worked with and seen recently had a really clear and a really important commitment to the performing arts. And I wondered as I walked into the school whether I would be able to see that commitment evidence in its physical environment, in its context. And there it was, prominent in the yard was a grand, a earthy, a beautiful performing arts stage, and it was committed also to that stage was wonderful seating areas for people to be able to enjoy the performances that were on. And then I stood around and I watched for a little bit longer to see what happened when the students came out. And what do you know? They gravitate to that wonderful special thing about their school, and they put on terrific shows for each other and they clap, and it's an incredibly positive place to be. And as they walk out of the school, all the students that were talking to me were saying, "Did you see the stage? Did you see how cool that stage is?" Having something special about your school that promotes positivity and connectivity is a wonderful way to get everybody working together. Like I said right at the start, environment generates behaviour. So instead of thinking all the time about what are we going to do about behaviour, it might be worth just a little moment where we think about how can we build an incredibly positive and special environment.